Hey guys, Jared here, and I have another Dragon Quest video for you today. Now this isn't exactly how I would like to do the video. I'd love to show you gameplay and stuff, but it's very challenging to do that when you're going to be talking about a lot of like DS games and things like that. So, sorry, you're going to have to just make do with this. So what I wanted to talk about today was about Dragon Quest and about how do you get into the series today. So I'm shooting this, it's April, I don't know the exact date, but it's April 2018. So how do you get into the Dragon Quest series today? And CJ on Twitter actually asked me that, was like, hey, what would you recommend I do? Do I go through and play Dragon Quest 1 all the way to 10? Because I mean Dragon Quest 11 is coming out, and I'm excited for Dragon Quest 11. So what do I do? Are they connected? Are they not connected? Blah, blah, blah. So what I thought I would do right now is actually just go through the series and give you my advice of where to start, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start chronologically. I'm going to go through the series, and then I'm going to highlight the ones that I think, you know, are really newcomer friendly, shall we say. So let's start off with the invisible ones, the ones I can't show you, and that's Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Now, where did I put my... here it is. They're available on mobile. They're available on mobile, they're available on NES, and they're available on the Game Boy Color. Now, unfortunately, what I consider the best versions of those games are the Super Famicom versions, which I don't have here at the house. They're in storage, and they were never released in North America. Now this is unfortunate, alright? This is kind of unfortunate. You can play the mobile ones, they're fine. There's some name changes to some of the towns and stuff like that. But I don't like the way they look. I don't find they look as good as the Super Famicom ones. There's just something about the Super Famicom ones, in particular 3. But since this is a video about where to start, those 3 games make up essentially, in North America, anyway, in Europe, the Erdrick Trilogy, okay? Dragon Quest 1 I don't recommend people start with because essentially all it is a grind. So literally all you're doing is fighting, leveling up, and then going and beating like the boss. And that's it. There is very little to do. There's some exploration, but really not much. Dragon Quest 2 introduced the party. Okay, so you had multiple people in your party. That means you would be taking on more than one enemy at a time, which in Dragon Quest 1 was just like that. There are some difficulty spikes along the way. The mobile versions have been improved, but it's not great in terms of telling you where to go, what to do. Again, it's a smaller RPG, significantly larger than Part 1. But again, not a great place to start. Dragon Quest 3 is really where the series begins, as I like to tell people. It's where it really starts. You start to see a lot of modern elements from Dragon Quest games that would appear later on. But again, would I start there? Not really, because Dragon Quest 3 introduced classes. Anytime there were classes that were introduced, it gets a little... It could be a little complex for brand new people. It's really simple. It really isn't that bad. But again, I'm looking at this like, okay, I want to explain to you how do you get into the series. So, not really the greatest one to get into the series. Also, if you don't play Part 1 and 2, you don't really get that oomph that you get from Dragon Quest 3. And besides, like I said, it's only available on the NES, the Game Boy Color, or on mobile, which means for 99% of you, mobile is the way you're going to experience it. And it's not the best way. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not the best way. So that gets us, that was the first trilogy. Now the next trilogy, they're all independent. You don't need to play them like back to back or anything like that. And that's these 3 right here. So basically, there's Dragon Quest 4. Okay, this is available again on mobile, but I would go with the DS version myself. Dragon Quest 5 and Dragon Quest 6. All 3 of these are available on mobile, and they're also available on the DS. I would strongly recommend going the DS route. The 2DS or the 3DS is backwards compatible. Now, very quickly with these. If you're going to start, I suggest you start with either 4 or 5 and not with 6. Why? 6 is a great game. It is a great game, but again, it's classes. So it uses the same class system as 3, except slightly more advanced, new classes, it's a little bit more rigorous. So it might put some people off. It's a game that's something like A Link to the Past in that you have 2 worlds that you essentially jump back and forth between. Great game, okay? That's something I want to make clear too. None of these am I knocking as bad games. They're not bad games. It's just that if you're brand new, if you saw Dragon Quest XI and were like, wow, I got to play that, man, I'm pre-ordering it, where should I begin if I want to get into the series? So that's what I'm recommending right now. So with these two, okay, they're standalone games, but they're very much story-driven games where you get party members, and those party members have different skills and things like that, and you swap out your party members. This one introduced the Pokemon, as I like to say, mechanic whereby you can actually go in the field, capture monsters, and then bring those monsters into your party. And now, these 3 make up what's called the Zenithia Trilogy. Okay, now, that not really in terms of story. They're not like the Erdrick Trilogy, where the Erdrick Trilogy, it's really story-based, albeit story-based. Parts 1 and 2 are very, very loose on the story. But with these, it's more, Zenithia is like a castle flying in the sky, okay? Think of it like that. So that's pretty much the only common element between those. There's a couple other things here and there, but there's not like some grand epic tale. So in other words, you could play 5 before you play 4. It's not really a big deal. It's not going to really break anything at all, okay? So that takes care of that. And then all the rest have little things that tie them together here and there. But again, it's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge type of thing. It's nothing that's really going to destroy anything, okay? Like I said, we're going to go through all of this. Well, let's just continue then. What the hell? So let's continue. So Dragon Quest VII, all right, is this one right here. I would not recommend this one to start. I really wouldn't recommend this to start. And the reason why I say that is because it's a unbelievably long game. It uses Dragon Quest VI class system. Again, it's evolved, it's more in depth, this and that. But it's really long. Like, it is a really long game. And some people might be turned off by that. You don't even get access to the classes until I think it was like 25 to 28 hours into the game. Another thing, if you have access to a PlayStation 1, and this is Dragon Warrior 7, same exact game. I'm not going to get into the whole naming convention, but it used to be called Dragon Warrior. That was Dragon Quest, in North America anyway. It was to do with copyright, trademark, I think it was, actually. They just couldn't get the name in North America. Anyways, I said I wasn't going to get into this. So I would not recommend this version. This version is, number 1, is extremely expensive. And number 2, it takes like 3 to 5 hours before you even fight your first enemy. You have like this whole huge, massive dungeon type thing that you have to go through, and it's all puzzles. This has been completely streamlined to make it quicker. That doesn't mean that the game is like any less like huge. It's still a gargantuan game, but yeah. Dragon Quest VIII, we got right here, and there was also this version right here. So very important right off the bat is that there's random encounters in the PlayStation 2 version. In the 3DS version, you see the enemies all over the screen. Okay, so that's big in and of itself. The other thing that I should mention is that with Dragon Quest VIII on the PlayStation 2, it's a 4x3 game. Actually, it might be in progressive. It doesn't say. I don't remember. This was radically more advanced than the Japanese version, which is in storage. I don't have that to show you, but they made a lot of improvements. But this is just easier to find today. And also it has new playable characters, there's more post-game, things like that. So would I recommend starting with that one? Maybe. Dragon Quest VIII is one of the best in the Dragon Quest series. There's no classes, so you don't have to worry about that. But it's also a long one. Not Dragon Quest VII long, but it is a very in-depth, very long game. Like, you're not going to beat Dragon Quest VIII in no 20 hours type of thing. Whereas if you started with Dragon Quest IV, you might. Dragon Quest IV, I put it this way, I finished all of Dragon Quest IV, all the post-game, all the casino-related stuff, and like everything you could possibly do in the game in 34 to 36 hours, somewhere around there. With Dragon Quest VIII, I think it was like 100. To do it all, I'm saying. To do absolutely everything. After that, we've got Dragon Quest IX. This, right now, is the only Dragon Quest, and correct me if I'm wrong, fans, but if I'm not mistaken, this is the only Dragon Quest game that is still available only on one platform. I'm pretty sure of that. This has not been released anywhere else. This is actually the next one in line for the remake status. Who knows what's going to happen with that. Would I recommend starting with Dragon Quest IX? Again, I'll do like a huge recap, but with Dragon Quest IX, I feel that it's more class-based again. And if you got a bunch of friends around and you have access to a DS or a 3DS, and you can use the local multiplayer features, then it's a great game. You'd have a really good time with this one. But there are classes in it. And anytime there are classes, I'm always a little leery to recommend that as a starting or an entry point into the series, because it is a little bit more complex. Because classes typically range from minor classes to medium classes to like advanced classes. And so you have to grind out levels of the beginner ones, reach a certain point, and then you get like an intermediate, and then from there you get your advanced classes. It's a little deeper, and some people could be like, whoa, this is like too intimidating. And again, I'm trying to really show you just how to jump in. Next up takes us to Dragon Quest X. Dragon Quest X is not an entry point, guys. I'm sorry, but no. You're not going to play Dragon Quest X and be like, this is my first game in the series. That's not going to happen, and I'll explain why. For starters, it's only in Japanese. This has not been released in the West. It has been released in China. It's available on the Switch, the PlayStation 4, PC, mobile, 3DS, like you name it. It's like all over Japan. If you're dead set in playing this one, then you go the PC route. It's the easiest. It's really the easiest way. This one contains, today you can get the all-in-one package that contains the first version, so like the default game, then the first expansion, the second expansion, but you'll have to go out and buy the third expansion if you want to experience the whole game. Again, I don't recommend Dragon Quest X to anybody as a starting or an entry point into the series. You're going to be totally lost because it's an MMORPG. So it's basically like Dragon Quest IX, but way more complex in what you can do. There's way more classes, and it's an online RPG. So yeah, it's just, no, I wouldn't recommend starting with that. And then, of course, that brings us all the way up to Dragon Quest XI, right? Which is why you're here in the first place. So this is Dragon Quest XI, available on both these platforms. In North America, it's coming out on the PlayStation 4 and on Steam. Alas, sadly, this one is not going to come to North America, which is unfortunate. It is. So, should you start with Dragon Quest XI? Well, guess what? You could. So what I'm going to do now, that's pretty much the whole series, the mainline entry. I would always recommend starting with the mainline entry and not one of the side games, because the side games are nothing like the main series. The main series are lengthy, deep role-playing games, and all the rest are, you know, you have action games, you have puzzle games, you have platform, you have, you name it, and there is a Dragon Quest game. So, recapping again, because I've already gone through the whole series. So, let's break down a few things here. So the original trilogy, like I said, is basically on mobile for like 99% of you watching this video. And it's really hard to recommend the first two Dragon Quest games to start. You could start with the third one, but again, the classes might might be a little intimidating. It's really not too bad, but I think 3 would be a good one to get into after you've experienced Dragon Quest already. And the reason I say that is more because of the connections to the first two. So, my personal recommendation is, let's see here, this, and, well, I'll just, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to do it like this. So, here's what I tell people. Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen. Why? Because no classes, a very short RPG. You can finish the whole thing in like 20 hours, 18 hours, something like that. If you don't know Dragon Quest whatsoever, bump that up to like say 22, 23, maybe 25, but I think that's kind of pushing it. And it's an excellent game. Also recommend Dragon Quest V. Same thing. Great game. Not too long. Some really interesting elements, but that aren't crazy complex, where you go out, recruit monsters, bring them back into your party. This is the infamous one where you play as a child all the way up until you have your own children. Very excellent game. Dragon Quest VIII. Okay, I'm showing this particular version on purpose. These versions are the versions I would recommend you experience the game on. This one is just great. Again, no classes or anything like complex to worry about. You have points that you can allocate to different weapons that make those weapons or those abilities with those weapons better, but it's really simple. Great voice acting, amazing music, just an incredible adventure. The only thing to warn you is it is a little bit lengthy, so if you're jumping in the series for like the first time, a little bit lengthy. And then finally, Dragon Quest XI, and I'm only holding this version up because it matches the other ones. It doesn't matter. In this case, I don't care what you experience the game on. Totally worth it. But again, much like 8, very lengthy game. You're not going to beat this in 20 hours or so. If you want to do everything, you're looking at probably 90 hours, 95 hours, somewhere in that ballpark. I'll hold up this version because that's what we're going to get. To do the main story, I forget what it was. I don't remember what it was. It's not crazy though. It's really not crazy. But there is one thing with this particular game. There's only one thing that kind of holds it back, and it's not a bad thing, but as an entry point, you're not going to understand any of the post-game content. Like, you're really... Well, it's not that you're not going to understand, you're not going to appreciate it as much as someone that is experienced, at the very least, Dragon Quest III or Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Now, is it mandatory? Not at all. It's basically just for the very end of the game. You might not get some of the little nods. But this is a great way to introduce yourself to the Dragon Quest series. So, again, why I would pick these guys, let me just, because we're not going to get that, it's so sad that we're not getting the 3DS one. Why I would recommend the 4, 5, 8, and 11 is just because there's no classes, they're all modern games, great stories, phenomenal. They really are, they're really good. Now, so that leaves 6, that leaves 7, that leaves 9, and let's just grab 10. So, these guys, okay, so 6... 7, 9, 10, I don't recommend to start with. I recommend to go with those afterwards just because of the class system, if nothing else. And of these, which ones I would start with, like in order, I'd start with 6. Introduces you very casually to the class system. Then I jump on 9, 10 if you understand Japanese. And 7 would be the last one. And the only reason I picked 7 as the very last one is of these is due to the fact that there's a lot of back and forth with it. A lot of back and forth. You basically do a dungeon in an area, go back to like, it's a time-based game, and you'll go back to another time and then do the exact same thing. The exact same dungeon, exact same pitfalls, exact same everything. And it's not easy to do. So some people might be like, wow, this is like overkill. And then, of course, there's the original trilogy. If the original trilogy was easily available on platforms outside of mobile. I mean, the mobile ones, they do work. It's just, for me, I'm not a fan of that. I like to immerse myself either on like a 3DS or on big screen TV or whatever, and unfortunately that's just not an option. But 3 I would include in this set. I would include that. So I would do like, say, 6. I would definitely do 3 and 6 at the same time, whatever. Either one are perfect. Then 9, 7 being last, and again 10 is the dead last if you don't understand Japanese or how Dragon Quest works at all. So that's it. I know there was a back and forth. Gave me a chance to talk a little bit about the series that I love. And a couple of you guys were asking me what I would recommend. Not what I would recommend. When am I going to show you guys my Dragon Quest collection? And the answer is probably a few years. By the time I get everything together and I have my game room set up with the posters I have and everything else of the series, it's probably going to be a few years. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much it. So what Dragon Quest game do you recommend? I have a feeling that there's going to be a buttload of you guys that are going to recommend this guy right here or its 3DS counterpart. I'm sure of it that many of you guys are going to recommend this game. And like I said, I mean, go for it. Go for it. Dragon Quest VIII is an amazing game. It's just that, like I say, it is a little bit long, and if you'd like to ease yourself into it. But be warned, you guys, if you've pre-ordered this bad boy, you're looking at nearly 100 hours to go through everything that the game has to offer. Nearly. I mean, I think 80, 85 hours, something like that is really realistic. It's well, more realistic. And it's a phenomenal game. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. This is a really, really good one. And so pretty much that's it. That's a look at where I would recommend you start if you're looking to get into Dragon Quest today in 2018 for the, before the release of Dragon Quest XI. All right, everybody. I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.